Rams fans, something is happening right now that I think every single person in Rams Nation needs to be paying attention to. We've got two stories today, and honestly, both of them could have some pretty interesting implications for this team as we get closer and closer to the season. One story is about a major move that completely caught a player off guard, and the other could open up a very interesting possibility involving the Rams quarterback room. And trust me, there's a lot more to both of these stories than what you might see at first glance. So stick with me, because we're going to break down both of them and talk about what they could actually mean for the Rams moving forward. And hey, if you're new here, I'm Jake. This is Rams House Daily, and we're still a brand new channel trying to build this community from the ground up. If you're a real Rams fan and you believe this team can make a serious run and finally bring another Super Bowl home, hit that like button and subscribe. We're trying to get our first 300 subscribers, and I'd love for you to be part of Rams House Daily from the very beginning. Let's start with Trent McDuffy, because the story behind how he ended up with the Rams is honestly pretty wild. McDuffy never expected to leave Kansas City. He was a former first-round pick who quickly developed into a shutdown cornerback and became one of the most important pieces of the Kansas City Chiefs defense. And heading into the final year of his rookie contract, it looked like an extension was basically inevitable. That was the expectation. McDuffy even explained that he believed the Chiefs were going to get a deal done. He talked about the situation on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast, explaining that the entire time, the message he was getting was essentially that the contract would eventually get done. So McDuffy decided he wasn't going to stress about it. He figured negotiations might take a while, so he was just going to enjoy his offseason. Book a trip, train, and wait for Kansas City to finish the deal. But then everything changed. McDuffy said that when the NFL Combine came around, his agent started talking with the Chiefs, and suddenly there were whispers that Kansas City might not actually bring him back. And that had to be a pretty strange moment for him, because imagine going into the offseason believing you're about to sign a long-term extension with the organization that drafted you, and then all of a sudden you're hearing that the team might be moving in a different direction. Then, just 2 days after the Combine ended, McDuffy was working out when his Apple Watch started going crazy with notifications. He had no idea what was happening, so he put his phone on Do Not Disturb because he wanted to finish his workout. And then his fiancée interrupted him and gave him the news. The Los Angeles Rams had traded for him, and this wasn't some minor transaction. The Rams made a blockbuster deal with Kansas City that involved 4 draft picks, including a 2026 first-round selection to acquire McDuffy. Think about that for a second. McDuffy had not even received a heads-up from the Chiefs. According to his own account, there had been no real conversation with Kansas City preparing him for what was coming. One moment, he was working out and expecting to continue his career in Kansas City. The next, he was being told he was heading to Los Angeles. He admitted that he was stunned and needed a moment to process everything. But once that shock wore off, the emotion changed pretty quickly. Because McDuffy was going home to California, and he was joining a Rams organization that he clearly became very excited about. And this is where I think Rams fans should really pay attention. McDuffy didn't describe the Rams like a team that simply happened to trade for him. He talked about a young, hungry roster where everybody seems genuinely committed to getting better. He specifically praised the environment created by head coach Sean McVay. McDuffy said he has seen McVay's program work, and he talked about how much belief exists inside the Rams locker room. The players are bought in. They believe in what they're doing. And McDuffy sounded like a guy who genuinely felt re-energized by the move. He talked about getting his spirit back, getting that swagger back, being in Los Angeles, and being around teammates who make football fun again. That is exactly the kind of reaction you want from a player who is supposed to become a major part of your defense. And from the Rams' perspective, the fit makes a ton of sense. Los Angeles already had a roster capable of competing at a high level. The cornerback position was one of the areas where the team needed an upgrade, and McDuffy represented exactly that kind of addition. The Rams and general manager Les Snead clearly believed he was worth paying a premium for, because after the trade, Los Angeles signed McDuffy to a 4-year extension that made him the highest-paid cornerback in NFL history. That is an enormous statement. You don't give a player that kind of contract unless you believe he can be a foundational piece of your defense. And now the Rams have to prove that this massive investment was worth it. The good news is that McDuffy doesn't sound like someone who is simply happy to be in Los Angeles. He sounds hungry, he sounds motivated, and he sounds like he genuinely believes this Rams team has something special brewing. That makes this story even more exciting for Rams fans, because this isn't just about adding another cornerback. It's about adding a player who has already established himself as one of the league's best defensive backs, putting him into Sean McVay's system and surrounding him with a young roster that believes it can compete. And we won't have to wait long to see him in a real game. The Rams are scheduled to open the season on September 10th against the San Francisco 49ers at the Melbourne Cricket Ground in Australia. That game will be historic because it will be the NFL's first regular season game in Australia. And for Rams fans, it's going to be our first chance to see Trent McDuffy officially wearing the horns in a regular season game. That is a pretty exciting way to start this chapter. Now, let's move to the second story, because this one is a little different. But it could become very interesting for the Rams, and it involves Stetson Bennett. The Detroit Lions suddenly have a problem behind Jared Goff. Teddy Bridgewater informed the Lions that he plans to step away from the team and will likely retire, according to ESPN's Ian Rapoport, and that creates a very real need in Detroit. The Lions are a playoff hopeful. Jared Goff is their starting quarterback, and they need somebody they can trust behind him. So naturally, one question being raised is whether the Rams could potentially become a trade partner. Why? Because Los Angeles currently has a quarterback competition happening behind Matthew Stafford. Stetson Bennett is battling first-round rookie Ty Simpson for the backup quarterback job, and this is where things get really interesting. Bennett is entering his fourth training camp, and earlier in camp, reports indicated that he had taken a significant step forward. That matters because Bennett has experience in the Rams system, and he has been around this organization for some time. But recently, things have apparently become more complicated. Reports have suggested that the wheels have come off a little bit for Bennett in recent days, with turnovers increasing. Meanwhile, Ty Simpson has shown some very encouraging signs. Simpson has displayed strong processing ability and good decision-making, and his arm talent has apparently looked better than some people expected during the draft process. And that creates a fascinating situation for Sean McVay. We already know Simpson is expected to play in the preseason. Whether Bennett plays is still unclear. And honestly, that decision itself could tell us a lot. If Bennett doesn't play, that could be interpreted as a pretty strong endorsement that he has already won the backup quarterback competition. But at the same time, the fact that McVay is still weighing the decision tells us that this competition isn't necessarily settled. And that's why the possibility of a trade has started to come up. If McVay believes the competition between Bennett and Simpson is extremely close, why not consider moving Bennett for draft capital? That is the argument. The Rams have been aggressive with veteran acquisitions, and as a result, Los Angeles is running low on future draft picks. So if the Rams believe they can trust Simpson to become the backup behind Matthew Stafford, trading Bennett could allow them to restock their draft capital while also giving a young quarterback an opportunity somewhere else. And Detroit could make sense. The Lions need another quarterback behind Jared Goff. The Rams have a quarterback who could potentially be available. And interestingly enough, the two organizations already have a history of working together through trades. So there are definitely some dots that can be connected here. But I don't think Rams fans should immediately start celebrating a Stetson Bennett trade, because there is another side to this. Bennett still has value to the Rams, and the biggest reason is Ty Simpson. Yes, Simpson may be showing impressive signs. Yes, he was a first-round rookie. Yes, he could potentially be the future backup, but that doesn't mean the Rams should rush him onto the field before he's ready. Matthew Stafford is the starter, and if something happens to Stafford during the season, the Rams need somebody they can trust. Bennett provides a layer of protection. He gives the Rams an experienced option while Simpson continues developing, and that's incredibly important. You don't want to throw a young quarterback into an NFL game before he's ready, especially if the pressure is enormous and the team is trying to compete. If Simpson gets thrown onto the field too early and struggles badly, you could potentially damage his confidence. So the question for Sean McVay and Les Snead isn't simply, can we get something for Stetson Bennett? It's, is the draft pick we get for Bennett worth losing that insurance? And that's a much harder decision. If the Rams could only get a mid-round or late-round pick, is that really enough to give up a quarterback who could protect the team if Stafford goes down? That's where this situation becomes complicated. On the other hand, if McVay truly believes Simpson is ready, then suddenly the equation changes. The Rams could turn Bennett into future draft capital, give Simpson a clearer path to playing time, and potentially solve another problem on the roster down the road. And Detroit has a reason to be interested because Teddy Bridgewater's decision changes the Lions' quarterback depth chart. Jared Goff remains the starter, but Detroit needs someone behind him, so could Stetson Bennett end up in Detroit? Right now, that's a possibility worth watching, not something we should treat as a done deal. And that's the important distinction. There's a real football reason for the Rams to consider the move. There's a real football reason for the Rams to keep Bennett. And Sean McVay now has to decide which option gives this team the best chance to win. Personally, I think this is exactly the kind of situation that makes the next few weeks so interesting for Rams fans, because we're not just watching players compete for jobs. We're watching the front office make decisions about the future of the roster. We're watching Sean McVay figure out how much he trusts a rookie like Ty Simpson. We're watching Stetson Bennett try to prove that he deserves to remain part of this team, and we're watching the Rams potentially turn a quarterback decision into additional draft capital. That's a lot happening at one position, and when you combine that with the arrival of Trent McDuffy, you start to see the bigger picture. This Rams team is not standing still. Les Snead has been aggressive. Sean McVay is trying to maximize this roster. And the expectations are high because Rams fans aren't satisfied with simply being competitive. We want a Super Bowl. That's the standard. That's always the standard when you have a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, a coach like Sean McVay, and an organization that believes it can build a championship roster. And that's why every one of these decisions matters. Trent McDuffy is being paid like a cornerstone defensive player, and now he has to help turn that investment into results. At the same time, the quarterback depth chart behind Stafford could change depending on what Sean McVay decides to do with Stetson Bennett and Ty Simpson. And if Bennett really does become available, Detroit could be one team to watch. So Rams fans, I want to know what you think. Would you keep Stetson Bennett as the safety net behind Matthew Stafford, or would you trade him to Detroit if the Rams can get meaningful draft capital in return? And what are your expectations for Trent McDuffy in his first season with the Rams? Because personally, I can't wait to see what this defense looks like when McDuffy is out there making plays. This is the kind of move that raises expectations, and now the Rams have to deliver. We all know what we're chasing. We're chasing another Super Bowl, and if you're a Rams fan, you already know how quickly things can change in this league. One great move can completely change the ceiling of a team, and one bad decision can come back to haunt you. Right now, I'm excited, I'm curious, and yeah, I'm a little nervous too, because when the expectations get this high, every decision matters. But that's what makes being part of Rams Nation so much fun. So if you enjoyed this update, hit that like button, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and tell me what you would do with Stetson Bennett. And if you're new here, this is Rams House Daily. We're still a brand new channel, and we're trying to build our first 300 subscribers with Rams fans who actually care about this team. So if you believe in this Rams team, if you believe Sean McVay and Les Snead can build another championship roster, and if you're dreaming about seeing the Rams back on that Super Bowl stage, subscribe and be part of this community from the beginning. 300 is the first goal, and I want to build it with real Rams fans, real Rams opinions, and real Rams passion. Because when this team makes its next Super Bowl run, I want to be able to look back and say we were here from the start. This is Rams House Daily. Let's keep building Rams Nation.